The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Risk Assessments for Tribal Persons Reentering Society. This webinar is a part of a webinar series in APPA's BJA grant-funded project, as well as a good webinar to provide professional development opportunities virtually during our current coronavirus pandemic. Before we begin the broadcast, speaking of coronavirus, I wanted to let everyone here know that they're aware of our web resource page surrounding COVID. This link on the slide you can find, or you can find a link on our homepage of our website, and at that link you'll just find various resources for community corrections agencies in dealing with the pandemic. We hope you find them helpful. So before we introduce today's presenter and move forward with the broadcast, I just want to go over a few housekeeping things. First, the broadcast is going to be recorded, and we'll later have it archived via APPA Connect and our YouTube channel, so you guys will be able to access this that way. The mics of all attendees should be muted through the duration of the broadcast. Should you have a question, please submit it in the questions pane on the side of GoToWebinar. And if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know via the chat pane of the control panel. Either way is fine. Just let us know in the chat and we'll try and help you out. On top of that, you'll see on the side there of GoToWebinar, there's a handout section. In that handout section, if you like, you don't have to, there's a PDF file of all the references and resources Gwen used to create today's presentation. And I believe that's all I have for you guys. So I'm going to go to this next slide and let Gwen take over and introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. Well, it's morning here in Arizona, so good afternoon to everyone else, depending on where you're at. Just want to take a moment to introduce myself. She Gwendolyn Red Hair Yanishnya, Tudishinishnya, Kiani Bashishchin. I just introduced myself in my Diné language. So I just said I am called Gwen Red Hair. I am Bitterwater Clan, which is my mother's clan, and born for Towering House Clan, which is my father's clan. I want to give a little background of who I am, where I've been as far as like my educational trail. I am from Arizona, originally from Northern Arizona, from the Navajo Nation. I relocated to Phoenix about a year ago. I got my bachelor's at ASU in Justice Studies with a minor in American Indian Studies and Sociology. And then a few years ago, I did complete my master's in administration with the emphasis in Justice Studies at NAU. During that time, I have built up a background with work experience in behavioral health assessments. So I've had about 8 years in this background. So that's why I am doing this presentation, just to kind of give everyone a little bit of a view of what I've experienced during that time, what I've studied. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know if there's anything else you would like to know about me. For now, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. If everyone wants to take a couple of minutes to introduce themselves in the chat box, kind of give me a view of who is all here attending this presentation. Also, during this presentation, if I'm asking questions to the group, if you could also just answer those questions in the chat box due to the high number of participants in this presentation. Also, at the end of every section, we will go ahead and take a few minutes to answer any questions that you guys have. And of course, during those time, please ask the questions in the chat box as well, and then we'll try to answer as much as we can during that time, all right? But for now, we'll take a couple of minutes and give you guys time to introduce yourself in the chat box. All right, thanks everyone for taking that time to introduce yourself. Travis, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So the objective of this presentation is focused on tribal cases involving the highest risk offenders, this including violent offenders. These cases are prosecuted by the United States Attorney under the Major Crimes Act, and in some cases by state prosecutors. Thus, these tribal members will serve their prison time in federal or state facilities that are often not close to the reservation. They are also more likely to live in a transitional housing setting post-release. in an urban setting and not on the reservation. Many of these tribal members are concentrated in the system, serving in a small number of federal facilities, composing significant proportions of federal probation and pretrial caseloads, and within tribes. Thus, coordination with federal, state, and tribal partners to support information sharing, support for cultural programming, reentry, and safety planning, and capacity of services on the reservation are feasible to the effective ways to ensure the successful reentry of high-risk tribal members to the reservation while protecting the safety of the tribe. Travis, do you want to go ahead and go on to the next slide, please? So this is the table of contents, just so that you guys all are aware of what topics are going to be talked about and where we'll be throughout the presentation. So we'll start off with the community supervision, talking about probation in Indian country, evidence-based practices, and then we'll go into screening and assessment process. We'll talk about screening, comprehensive assessment, risk, need, responsibility principles, and then benefit of screening and assessment tools, challenges in using the assessment tools, and then results in the references is should be on one of the handouts on the web page that you guys were provided through APPA. So it won't be on the slide, but it will be provided to you guys. So let's go ahead and jump in. We'll start off with community supervision. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So we'll start off with community supervision. Of course, this topic will cover probation in Indian country and evidence-based practices. Travis can go to next. Thank you. So why are many individuals placed on supervision after incarceration? Let's give the group a little bit of time so that you guys can answer this question in the chat box.
Hey, Gwen, looks like we got some answers here. One person says to assist in reentering society, lack of reentry intervention pre-release because it's required by local laws, helps them transition back into society, helps them have a successful reentry by providing support and services, helps also to complete their sentence. I'm assuming they mean, if jail or prison space is low. Being on supervision enables officers to provide folks with resources to adapt to reentering society. Another person says to monitor their compliance and just local statutes and laws and things like that.
Thank you guys for answering this question. You guys all had some great answers. I do have one more for you guys if you guys want to answer this one. Is there a difference between supervision with jurisdiction? Okay, let me repeat the question. Is there a difference between supervision with jurisdiction?
Here we go. We got some answers flowing in now. This is not same action in different community and rural community, same time to cross restrictions. If by jurisdiction you mean county, state, and federal, there is a difference. I believe there is.
Yes.
Individuals know they're being watched, they will less likely repeat offenses. And someone says there's definitely a difference between federal and state.
Awesome. That's what I wanted to hear. Thanks. Thank you, guys. That is exactly what I wanted to hear. Yes, there is a difference with supervision with state, federal, and tribal, just depending on where the individual is placed. Travis, can you go on to the next one, please? Okay, so probation department in Indian country. In non-Indian country, non-tribal probation departments utilize some form of probation agreement that their primary purpose is to enforce the orders of the court through compliance monitoring. For non-tribal jurisdiction, the main benefit to the use of probation is to reduce jail prison populations, maybe an overgeneralization. Many probation departments do make an effort to for rehab, whereas the tribal jurisdiction, the benefit stems from the desire to treat and heal those individuals in criminal offending and reduce the separation of individuals from their families and cultural connection. So there are 8 evidence-based practices for effective intervention. The first one is assess actual risk, which refers to using tools that provide measurement on known risk factors associated with criminal behavior, such as criminal history, antisocial attitudes, unemployment, low education level, and substance abuse. The next one, number 2, is to enhance hence the instructional motivation refers to helping individuals identify internal motivators, such as being able to provide for their family, and to instigate and sustain behavior change rather than relying on external motivators, such as the court compliance. Number 3 is the target interventions. This principle consists of 5 supporting principles. And those 5 supporting principles, the number 1 is risk principle, which refers to prioritizing supervision and treatment interventions towards offenders who demonstrate a higher risk of reoffending. Number 2 is the need principle, which refers to targeting interventions to address offenders' greatest criminogenic needs or dynamic or changeable risk factors that are directly related to an offender's criminal behavior, such as antisocial attitudes, values and beliefs, their low self-esteem, criminal peers, and their substance abuse. The third one is responsibility principle, which refers to targeting interventions and services according to each individual offender based on things such as gender, their cultural, motivational stages, their developmental stages, and learning styles. Number 4 is the dosage, which refers to ensuring that offenders are exposed to interventions are delivered at the amounts prescribed to affect change. And the last supporting principle is the treatment principle. And that one refers to ensuring that treatment components are integrated into the supervision plan. This increases the accountability of the offender and allows the probation officer and the treatment provider to communicate regarding the offender's progress. So those are the 5 supporting principles for the target intervention. So number 4 for the 8 evidence-based practices is a skill train and directed practice, which refers to ensuring that recommended interventions go beyond knowledge, building to include skill-based learning components related to anti-social thinking patterns, social learning, and appropriate communication techniques. Number 5 is increased positive reinforcement. This refers to ensuring that offenders are given positive reinforcement throughout the supervision and treatment process. At least 4 positive reinforcements are needed for every 1 negative reinforcement to promote positive behavior changes. Number 6 is engage ongoing support in natural communities. This refers to engaging pro-social supports for offenders. In most cases, families and close associates are vital for enforce new behavior positivity. Additional options include 12-step programs, faith-based activities, a restorative justice initiative, just some positive programs that could influence them. Number 7 is the measure relevant processes and practices. This refers to the process of agencies collecting data to track and measure outcomes of program services. Number 8 of the evidence-based practices is to provide measurement feedback. This is very important, refers to officers providing feedback to the vendors on their program, their process, giving that extra boost to them to see the positive feedback. Feedback helps them to increase their motivation. It lowers treatment process for them, and this improves their outcome. Just to let the team know and the attendees, I am taking breaks here and there, so you might see me go on mute just for like a few seconds, because I am pregnant, so I try to catch my breath and get back on task. Just to let you guys know, okay? Before we go into the next section of screening and assessment, I am going to take a minute break, just real quick, and I will be right back, okay?
So while Gwen's catching her breath here, we'll just kind of go over what you guys said when I can't even talk now, where everybody was from. Let me scroll back up here and see who we got in the room. We got some Polk County people here. Oh gosh, please don't judge me. Catawba Indian Nation, Pinal County, Arizona. Lots of Arizona people in here helping represent Gwen. We've got some Navajo Nation. I'm not going to try and say that word. We've got more South Carolina people from Catawba Nation. More Arizona people. We got Ute Mountain Tribe officer in here. I think that's all the people that did their intros. So pretty diverse crowd of people.
I'm back, sorry.
We got Wisconsin here, Jefferson County, Oregon. Hey, Gwen, I was just letting everybody know where everybody's from. You can have a...
Oh, awesome. Okay. Are we back on, Travis?
Yeah, sure. Take over. I was just kind of feeling... We've got Arkansas here, Wisconsin, so all over the U.S.
Oh, awesome. That's good to hear. Do they mention like their titles?
Sorry about that, Gwen. I was muted and answering a question. Some of them did. We had anywhere from managers here. We had some wellness counselors here, a lot of officers. Yeah, all different levels of supervision.
Oh, okay. Awesome. That's good to hear. Thanks. Can you let me know when we're back on?
Yeah, you're good. You can take over. I can go to the next slide if you want me to. Hey, Gwen, we're ready for you if you're ready.
Oh, sorry. I was talking and I had myself on mute. Okay. Go ahead. All right. So go ahead and go to the next screen. All right, this next section is covering screening and assessment process. Let's go to the next one, Travis. So let's take a moment to answer this question. What is one way to improve outcomes among tribal offenders?
You guys are welcome to keep answering that in the questions pane, or if you see the chat pane there. Can't remember what the logo for the chat pane is. I think it's a bubble. You should be able to type your answers into that. So we're starting to get a few answers roll in. Gwen, I'll read off these first few while other people type theirs in. But one person says access to employment options, the need to address higher crimogenic needs with services, through the risk of a risk assessment tool. Another person also commented on utilizing risk assessment. Someone said, similar to one of the first answers, assisting with employment, as well as housing and mental health services. Those are some of the answers that are flowing in so far.
Awesome, thank you.
Involving the family and community, as well as being culturally sensitive, understanding historic trauma.
Okay. All right, so thank you all for answering that. One way to improve outcomes among tribal offenders is through the use of screening and risk assessment tools. These types of tools can facilitate the development of supervision plans that protect the community and hold the tribal offender accountable, as well as identify more accurately any treatment needs that may be contributing to the offender's criminal offending behavior. Identifying and utilizing appropriate assessment tools are key factors in targeting appropriate interventions and treatment for tribal offenders. Screening and assessment tools can be and should be used to help guide decision-making in almost every aspect of community corrections, from the time an individual enters the system until the time he or she is discharged from community supervision. Screening and assessment tools also assist in ensuring that available resources are used effectively. All right. Let's go to the next slide, Travis. So screening. Screening tools are usually short, consisting of only a few questions that provide probation officers basic information about individual and his or her possible issue. Most screening tools are single domain tools, meaning they only focus on one certain area. However, a few are designed to cover multiple domains, such as one screening tool that evaluates education and employment variables. While they don't give us a full picture of all the problems or the severity of the problems of an individual may have, they can provide basic information to help identify potential issues so that you can determine most appropriate next steps, which may include the need for a more comprehensive assessment and better utilize available resources. Screenings should be conducted as early in the justice process as possible, as they can guide decisions made throughout the system. For example, screening tools are useful in pretrial for making quick determinations about whether to release or detain a defendant, or developing pretrial supervision conditions. Once individuals are adjudicated, screenings help to determine a primary level of supervision, which is low, medium, or high, as well as potential issues an individual may have that their needs for more comprehensive assessments, such as a substance abuse assessment or a mental health assessment. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide. Comprehensive assessment. If a screening tool indicates the need for a more in-depth evaluation, then you may need to complete or refer an individual for a more comprehensive assessment. A comprehensive assessment are usually longer in length and are designed to get deeper into the issues individuals may be having. Like screening, certain assessments may be specialized, meaning they are designed specifically for special populations or to cover only certain domains. But many comprehensive assessments are designed to capture information related to multiple domains. All right, let's go to the next slide. Risk, need, and responsivity principles. Risk principle. Risk refers to the likelihood that someone will reoffend. Risk level is not necessarily related to the offense type. The risk principle directs us to prioritize supervision and treatment resources for individuals who present a higher risk of reoffending. Research indicates that focusing time and resources on high-risk offenders, especially while adhering to the need and responsibility principle discussed results in low recidivism rates. It is still important to hold low-risk individuals accountable for their behavior. However, minimal sanctions are usually significant with the risk population in reducing the recidivism rates. Risk factors. A risk factor is the criminal justice field refers to anything that may increase the likelihood that an individual will engage in criminal behavior. Research indicates that there are a number of factors, namely statistics and dynamic risk factors that, when present, can increase the chances that someone will reoffend. Static risk factors are historical attributes of an individual that cannot be changed, such as age of first offense, number of prior convictions. While these factors are important and have value in informing risk determinations, a probation officer cannot do anything to have an effect on them because they happened in the past. As a tribal probation officer, you should direct your time and effort into addressing the dynamic risk factors, or factors that you can target with interventions to effect change over time, such as employment, education, family dysfunction, negative peer association, antisocial attitudes, antisocial personality traits, and alcohol and substance abuse. The use of screening and assessment tools will help you not only identify these issues, but also to prioritize them in a way that is most helpful for individuals on your caseload and maximize the resources you have available. The need principle, anyone who has worked with individuals caught up in the justice system can easily recognize that each person comes with his or her own unique set of issues and problems that contribute to his or her behavior. such as their criminal history, their substance abuse, lack of employment, homelessness, mental illness, gang association. Sometimes the number and variety of issues that an individual has can be overwhelming, and we wonder why. I'm sorry, hold on. And we wonder how we can address everything and make a difference in that person's life while still protecting public safety. The need principle directs us to focus our energy, interventions, and resources on the individual's greatest criminal needs. The risk of reoffending has been narrowed down to 8 dynamic risk factors, with 4 known as the Big Four, demonstrating consistent correlation with criminal behavior. The Big Four are the antisocial behavior, which is aggressiveness, defiance of authority, cruelty, and argumentiveness. The second one is antisocial personality, which is compulsive, adventurous, aggressive, disregard of others. And antisocial cognition is such as basically the process of stating that the justice system is corrupt. And anti-social peers, which of course is criminal behavior with friends, family, just who they are associated with and engaging with. The next 4 are drugs and alcohol abuse, family and marital status issues, work and school, such as lack of education and employment, engaging in inappropriate kinds of leisure activities. Responsibility principle. The responsibility principle directs us to match probationers to treatment and interventions based on their individual characteristic. Factors can be internal, such as age, gender, race, mental health status, level of motivation for change, or external, which is how you react with the probationer, characteristics of program staff, treatment environment, level of social network of support. Both internal and external factors have the ability to either interfere with or facilitate learning. So it is important to identify these characteristics so that they can be dealt with and capitalize upon them during supervision. Being responsive involves considering these types of factors when matching probationers to treatment type. Matching individuals in interventions is probably one of the most daunting challenges, as most jurisdictions do not have an excessive menu of programs available to meet the responsive factors presented by every individual on your caseload. Nonetheless, it is important to identify these factors so that you can make the most appropriate referral based on the resources in your community and work with treatment providers to adjust their services as best as they can to be effective for the probation. I like to acknowledge that there are certainly no widely used tools that have been developed for or validated with tribal populations. Additionally, there are very few studies that support the ability of these instruments with native populations, which can call into question the accuracy of some of the tools when used with Native participants. That, of course, doesn't mean that they don't generate accurate risk need scores. It's just that we can't exactly be sure. However, a literature review of certain studies does suggest that some of the most common questions or domain may not be as indicative of risk with native populations as they are with mainstream populations they have been designed for. Also, most tools aren't particularly strength-based and tend to not account for culture or tradition or community connectedness as part of risk calculation in their tools. There aren't significant studies out there which demonstrate these attributes are protective factors, but we have heard that many tribal justice practitioners that most common R&R tools aren't culturally responsive or fall flat because they don't acknowledge the power of cultural connectedness. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So comprehensive risk and needs assessment. Assessment is important because it informs decisions about classification, placement, and programming, as well as whether a specialized need assessment is warranted. The completion of risk need assessments is essential throughout the supervision process. It should not be in one and done event. The reassessment of probationers throughout the supervision process allows you to determine if interventions are working, as it is assumed that risk level and needs will change as individuals are exposed to interventions or as circumstances in their life change. Reassessments for medium and high-risk probationers should be built into your supervision plan at periodic intervals, such as every 4 months or every 6 months. However, reassessments should also be completed anytime a probationer experiences a major event, such as a divorce, marriage, birth of a child, or loss of a loved one, if they committed a new crime. Some of these risk-producing events may be time limited, but would require increased attention because of the potential of these events to trigger a relapse. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Other specialized screening and assessment tools. There are other tools that will require a probation officer to refer the probationer to another professional well-versed in the specialized area, such as a mental health professional or a substance abuse counselor. If you make a referral to another practitioner, it is essential to ensure that the assessment results are shared with you for inclusion in the supervision strategy and for intervention referrals. A mental health screening assessment tool So the other tools are a mental health screening assessment tool. There is an alcohol substance abuse screening and assessment. There's a sex offender screening and assessment, domestic violence, and a strength-based assessment. If a referral is made to a mental health professional for a screening or assessment, he or she may perform more than one diagnostic test to adequately evaluate an individual's mental health status. All right, so we'll go ahead and stop right here. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and type it in the box, the chat box. We'll answer maybe 1, 2, or 3 questions and then move on to the next area.
Looks like one person did say a problem they have is the lack of resources they have in their area just because they're very rural. And then another person wanted to know, do you know how many tribal probation departments are currently using a validated risk assessment tool? You don't happen to know that, do you? I don't.
I don't, just because there's really not one for, for Indian country, because they're not cultural based or anything like that. So I know that they always use numerous assessments to try to figure out how they can support them, but there's not really one tool to use due to the lack of resources.
Looks like that's our only question. If you want, I muted myself.
Okay.
If you want to move on, go ahead.
Were they able to hear me?
Yeah, they're never not able to hear us now. You're always pretty much on. Yeah, they heard you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So benefit of screening and assessment tools. Managing caseloads and workloads. The use of screening and assessment tools can help tribal probation officers better manage caseloads and workloads. As a result, utilize the sometimes limited resources more effectively and efficiently. Some tribal probation officers often report having to supervise people spanning large geographical area, sometimes as far as a one-day drive away to complete a home visit. The use of screening and assessment tools to identify the risk of each individual on your caseload helps you prioritize when and how often you make home visits and possibly identify the need for a mobile and satellite office to ease long-distance supervision barriers. Another issue some tribal probation officers report is having a high number of individuals on their caseload. Some tribal probation officers have active cases of more than 400 probationers, and many of these have mix of both juvenile and adults. The use of screening and assessment tools can help prioritize who needs more time and attention. If you are able to identify individuals that can be supervised through phone contact, or those individuals that only require monthly contact or biweekly contact, you can lessen your workload. You can also provide objectively. The use of screening and assessment tools allows for decisions to be based on statistical and validated data, and not so much as feeling or judgment. better allocation of resources, the availability of resources in any jurisdiction is limited, particularly in today's economy. Evidence-based practice tells us that being responsive in the individual's need of probationers by matching resources to identify needs promotes better outcome. Prioritizing the case management, which we discussed, managing their time by determining who needs more time and attention and resources. However, the assessment process can help you identify which needs are most pressing so that they can be prioritized and dealt with accordingly. Tangible ways to identify needed resources, information gathered to administer screens and assessments can do more than just help identify resources. It can also help identify the resources and services for your community as well. Justify community supervision over incarceration and justifying sentence recommendation. This can also be beneficial because a tribal probation officer can recommend the supervision conditions that he or she feels are necessary all at one time instead of having to go back and forth to the judge and add or remove conditions once the case is officially disposed. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to the next section. So that's section. Due to limited time, I'm not going to take questions for that part, but I will have my contact information at the end, just so we can get through these last few slides before 12 o'clock. Challenges to using assessment tools. There's lack of support with administration policies and procedures. There's always, for screening and assessment procedures to be fully successful, support, and there's just always that lack of support in those communities with administrators and leaders within the tribal justice system. There's lack of resources necessary to address the individual's needs, to identify, like we mentioned, rural places, there's really nothing in their area. They have to travel elsewhere for that. And then transportation on top of that is, difficult as well. Lack of access to records outside tribal jurisdictions, such as local, state, national criminal data. So I know those are some other challenges that we do face with assessment tools. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Results. Probation in Indian country is a valid component for the criminal justice system. Probation officers are not only assessed by the judiciary, but by collecting and synthesizing information, defendant probationer information, and available community resources. They also have the potential to positively influence the individuals they supervise into making long-term behavior changes. So that's the result of this objective. Let's go to the next slide. The recap is many tribal probation officers are responsible for supervising large caseloads of individuals. Therefore, it could be easy to follow cookie cutter approach to supervision where similar objective offender type receive the same condition and intervention. However, evidence-based practice tells us that by identifying and prioritizing risk and needs factors, by being responsive to individual traits, we can have a greater impact and reducing the number of individuals who keep cycling through the system. It is important to understand that there is a great variance in why someone reoffends or offends. The use of evidence-based practice shows us how to respond to each individual based on these differences, so that as probation officers, we can have more successful probation outcomes and generate long-lasting impacts on the probationers with which we work. So let's go to the next slide. And here's my contact information. I'm sorry I couldn't get any questions asked on the last couple of sections, but if you do want to reach out, my email's right here, my work cell phone, my office number, if you do need to get in contact with me. This will also be on the website.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, everyone. This is Pam.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Pam.
Go ahead, Travis. That's all right. I'm Pam. I'm Travis and Nan's colleague at APPA, and we just want to thank all of you for joining us today, and also thank you to Gwendolyn Redhair for your presentation, for sharing your expertise and your background with our field and so on. Before we conclude for today, we just want to let everyone know that if you are not a member of APPA, we do encourage you to join. We are the largest association for the community corrections industry, and the stronger we are in number, the more that we can do for the field. And we just encourage everyone who is not a member to come take advantage of that and to reap all the benefits that are there as a member. For just $50, as the slide says, you can join to become an individual member. There are other levels of membership, and we would certainly be glad to discuss that with you. If you have questions, you can contact APPA or go to our website and find the membership information there. Next slide, Travis. And also, we want to bring your attention to the Tribal Community Corrections Support Center. This is a great segue into so many resources out there for tribal communities and agencies and other groups that are working in that field, in that area. There are resources for technical assistance. This is something that we are very excited at APPA to have and to have launched this. So here's contact information for that. My colleague Nan Benali is very active in helping direct people to those proper resources that they're seeking. And so you can get to this via the direct address there listed on your screen, or you can visit APPA's website and segue to it there. But again, just some incredibly important and diverse resources that are available for tribal agencies and those working in those communities. I'm going to turn this back over to Travis if he has any final words to wrap up the webinar today. But again, thank you all so much for joining, and thank you to Gwendolyn for presenting today.
No, I think that's it, guys. I know we've gone a few minutes over, so like I said, you'll be able to find this recording on this website right here, probably in a week or so. And thanks for everybody for being here. Thanks to Gwen, and join us for our next one.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Yeah.